and one additional drill during high traffic or transition points in the school day. Desiree Early from the Lafayette Parish School System is here to discuss in-service training and drills. Desiree has been the Director of Risk Management for the Lafayette Parish School System since May 2020. She has an MBA, holds Associate in Risk Management certification from the Insurance Institute of America, and is a certified paralegal and Louisiana certified paralegal. Prior to working for the school system, she worked for a publicly traded company handling risk management, corporate filings with the SEC, NYSE, stock issuance, and general office administration. And prior to this, worked at a law firm focused on acquisitions, divestitures, contract management, and litigation. It's all yours, Desiree.
All right, thank you. Good morning. The good thing about going last is a lot of things you have in your presentation have already been talked about, so we can kind of skim over those. So I'm going to talk about drills today. And I know we all sit back and we think, okay, I got my drills down. I do my fire drills. I do my active shooter drills. We do shelter in place. And it becomes routine. And to some degree, we need that muscle memory. But in a lot of ways, we need to change things up. So I'm going to present something. This doesn't directly apply to drills, but it's something we did that made people look at things a little bit differently. And every school has the opportunity to kind of put something out there. So I'm only going to play a portion of this just so you can see something that we decided to do that focused on safety.
Let's see. The teachers, faculty, and staff have laid out how they'll look after the lives of all Lafayette Parish learners.
Check. And our SROs have been practicing how to protect their perfectly precious pupils. Check.
Now, just one more box to check off before summer ends. School students on strategies for securing their own safety? This must be a typo.
What can us kids do to be certain students and schools stay safe and sound?
Well, to start, it's as simple as being aware of your surroundings.
And speaking up.
Think of it this way. If you see something, say something.
I'm listening.
Safety is everyone's responsibility, and I think the superintendent and sheriff would agree.
That's right. Safety is a job for us all. I'm Lafayette Parish School Superintendent Irma Trosclair.
And I'm Lafayette Parish Sheriff Mark Gar.
Okay. Like I said, I just wanted to show you something that we had done a couple of years ago that kind of put safety out there. So put our students involved again with our law enforcement, and it kind of put it all together. So it's just something that is out there that's to be done differently, that you could focus on drills. The functional annexes, hazard specific and training, Paul Toop spoke about it, and the prior person, Lauren spoke about these also. So I'm not going to go into details. They did a fantastic job. So these are just out there with regard to how you do your drills and how you connect those drills. Okay, I have the litany of what statutes and what requirements you have to do based on being a school. I'm not going to go into detail. You guys will have access to this presentation. So if you ever have to reference these, they're there. And there's quite a few, but they're all there to do that. This is a fire prevention. This is not statute. This is under the fire prevention code that requires that you do your 2 fire drills in the first 30 days and then 1 drill a month after that. All right, I'm going to talk about fire drills first. Fire drills become very routine. You know, the alarm goes off, you open your door, you grab your roll book, and you walk out the door. So, and you go out the same direction. How do you change that up? That's good that you're not panicking, but what if there's a fire at the door you normally exit out of, or the door's broken and you can't? So I suggest that in that process of how you're exiting that room with that normal routine, block off a door, have your SRO or one of your administrators block the door off and make them think differently, because you can't plan a fire. Fire is not going to be where, oh, it's always in this location, so we know we can always go out of this door. Again, now fire drills planned, you know they're going to happen, so it's routine, you walk out the door. What about unplanned fire drills? Fire alarm goes off and it's not something that you're aware of. So there are people out there that are unscrupulous and pull fire alarms and try and get people to evacuate. So you do have to take that precaution. Our law enforcement that we work with have suggested that those teachers look out and make sure, is there really a fire in the hall? Is there someone standing out in the hall? Do you hear gunfire? So there should be a slight hesitation, but you still need to evacuate and grab your roll book, close and lock your door, and exit the building. So not too different, just a little bit more to put yourself on notice that it could potentially be something else. Again, like they said, you know, fire drills should always be treated as a real fire. I know they become routine, but we really need to think about them being this legit. What if there was a fire? What if there was something blocking me? And even to have the teachers come back into the classrooms and say, hey, we didn't get to go the normal way. Which direction should we have gone? And then just a couple of lessons. You should always be at least 50 feet from a building. And for a multi-story building, they say staging twice as far away from the building should it collapse. And that's just things that are out there that most of us do. These are reportings. Of course, we have the fire marshal or various fire departments contact us and say, hey, I need all the fire drills you did for the, you know, these 3 months or these 6 months. So we report all of ours in their Google forms. For fire drills is a separate one. And then we do all our emergency drills, which include our shelter in place, our lockdowns, now we've got a new one that's required, a cardiac emergency response plan. So all our drills are done under the emergency drill, so we can maintain a record of everything that's done at our schools with just running a report. All right, so these are our drills and exercises that we do. We do lockdowns, shelters in place, evacuations, and of course, if you do any of those, you have to be all clear. Tabletops, drills, functional exercises, all these were discussed by Lauren and by Paul. So I don't know, I'm not going to really go into detail. One of the things when you go through those drills, though, do a debriefing afterwards and see how could you have done better. Last year, we actually did tabletop exercises and presented those to every one of our principals at each of the meetings that we have with them on a monthly basis. And it made them come back to us and say, I hadn't thought about that, because we gave situations. At the end, we're going to do a tabletop exercise. Again, functional annexes. How do those pieces connect together? You need to make sure that if you're in a shelter in place because of it, you think is a medical condition, but something else happens and you need to evacuate, how do your pieces connect together to where you can smoothly transition from one to another? We have, this is our poster. We have in every single classroom, every cafeteria, every office in our buildings, every one of our locations. It's the same for everyone. There's no confusion. We don't use a code red, a code blue, a code green. We don't use a soft lockdown, a hard lockdown. We use these codes, and that way there's no confusion as to what those kids need to do and what the potential situations may be. These set out, you know, with a lockdown. What do you need to do? What happens? What causes a lockdown? An armed person, an active threat, shots fired, a suspicious person on campus. So we actually had a lockdown drill a couple of years ago with our principals. And normally, you know, our principals are the ones in charge and they're managing the people. And the way we set it up, which was interesting, is we had a normal like safety conference. We had our law enforcement come in and talk about active shooters. And then we dispersed these people into classrooms. We actually just randomly assigned them to classrooms so they couldn't be sitting with all of their cohorts from their school together. So that way they were in an environment that they may not have known anyone besides themselves. But we had an emergency situation in each one of those classrooms. We had someone that was going into premature labor. We had someone having an anxiety attack. We had a CPR dummy. We had a situation that said, hey, you know, you need to figure out how to do a bathroom. So each of those rooms had an emergency situation. And so we had advised them, we're going to go through the motions. You're going to have an emergency. But we hadn't truly informed them that it was going to be, they were going to hear gunfire. And so when that happened, we had one classroom of principals run out of the building to evacuate because they felt like they could safely do that. We had one office, the one that had the anxiety attack. they actually called a Acadian ambulance because they were truly concerned that this person was having an anxiety attack. One of the things that I was just with the district at that point in time, and I hadn't thought about what's the code so that people know that they can come out. So we actually had to go in and lock the doors after the drill. And I've spoken to some of the principals after this one, and one particular just recently said, you know, she goes, I'm a hunter. She said, but in that classroom, hearing gunfire was scary. So I really recommend if you can coordinate it with your law enforcement to try and get something like that done, because it really puts those principals and assistant principals in an environment that they're not in control of, and they see things a little bit differently. Okay, these are all lockdown procedures. So away from windows and doors, remain in a seated position out of sight, remain quiet, turn your cell phone off or stay off the phone. Cafeterias, you want to run, hide, or fight. Go into a manager's office, a bathroom, anywhere to conceal yourself versus being out in underneath the table, because an active shooter is going to see you. Fighting is always the last resort, but our law enforcement has says if that's your only option, throw whatever you can put your hands on. Now, one of the things that we have advised all of our administrators and principals, and this is per our law enforcement, is once you lock your door to your classroom, you can't open it. So if you're a student, you have been advised, if you're in the bathroom, you need to put your feet up on top of that toilet and hide there. Do not, because they're not going to be let back into that classroom. And that's a difficult one. In our drill that we actually had someone banging on doors to see if anyone would let them in, and no one did. So in a drill, it worked. In real life, who knows? Hopefully not. But you never know who's behind that person knocking on the door. So teachers, confirm your doors are locked and closed, turn off your lights, confirm the phones are on silent, and make sure all your students are accounted for. And that allows you, if there's a student that did go to the bathroom, that when you do evacuate, you can let law enforcement know or emergency responders that there was a child that's not in the classroom that should have been. Don't keep teaching, don't allow students to remain at their desk, and don't allow anyone in or out of the classroom. So all lockdown drills should be treated as a real lockdown. It doesn't matter how long it takes. We actually had a situation where there was a death threat, and I'm going to do something very briefly with regard to that. And it was almost 6 hours, kids were in lockdown. You can't treat it like it's not real, because the day that you do that, it could be the one that it is a real drill. It's not a drill, it's a real life event. So shelters in place. When do you typically do a shelter in place? Typically law enforcement related. They may be in the general vicinity of the area of the campus. There could be dangerous weather, shelter in place. There could be a medical situation that you don't want to expose other children to, so you keep them in their classrooms. We've had a loose animal before. Just remain in the building, normal instructions, and make sure, let's say you're sheltering in place. So you're in your classroom. Well, what happens if that animal comes on campus or into your hall? So do you need to go into lockdown now? So you need to make sure that you connect and say, what if, and look at those pieces. Evacuate. So you have an on-site evacuation a lot of times, and a primary off-site evacuation, and typically a secondary evacuation point. So bomb threats. This one, I just recently had a conversation with the captain over our SROs about bomb threats. And the concern now, it was always evacuate. But now the concern is that you evacuate and there's actually a bomb in your second location. So if you're going to evacuate to a second location on your campus, have law enforcement search that location and make sure that it's safe to evacuate in. Because there's a mixed discussions now about should you stay if there's a bomb threat. Typically, if somebody calls it in, then it's you evacuate because they're not on campus. But a lot of times he's told us that when they're calling it in and they wrote something on a mirror, that there's less likely to be something on that campus. And so that's hit or miss with that one. That's a tough one. And we've gone back and forth that. In fact, I attend the National SRO Conference, and it's come up year after year as to how do you treat a bomb threat? What if they put a bomb in a second location? So that's not hard and true every time any longer. Emergency exit for bus drills. This is required every year to do your bus drill within the first 6 weeks of the school. And the Form T8 must be completed. It's sent to our transportation department, and risk management maintains a copy of it also. So you have to exit through your back door, everyone. Everyone exit through your front door, and then split it half and half. You don't have to go through the roof or through windows or anything like that. We had a bus accident where it was a head-on collision. Someone actually died as they ran into the front of our bus. And it hit our bus so hard that the kids could not evacuate out of the back door. So they had to go through the front door. And the bad part about that is they saw the deceased gentleman leaning out of his car window. So we had to do a lot of debriefing and a lot of counseling after that. And you don't always think you go, okay, bus accident, we're going to evacuate, no big deal. But there's trauma behind those. It's just the accident itself. And then, like I said, a lot of these kids saw this gentleman that was deceased, and that was a tough thing for them to swallow. So think outside of the box. It's not just, okay, kids go in, out the back, go out the front, and then let's split it. What else could happen? What could keep you from doing that? Again, this is something to think about. So typically your hearing impaired people are in an environment where there's an interpreter. What if you're in some special circumstance where you've got kids that are hearing impaired and that interpreter is not present, or that interpreter is injured and can't respond? How are you going to accommodate those children? Are they impaired academically also? So think about those kind of things. How are you going to handle that in any kind of a drill that you have where they can't hear you? And you tell them, okay, be quiet. Well, they can't hear you to be quiet. How do you communicate with them? So think about that kind of stuff. Reunification drills. This is something that we've actually spent a lot of time getting into place with at LPSS. You need to make sure you have a primary site and a backup site. Roles and responsibilities. So Lafayette Parish has decided that every single person at district office is going to be a part of assisting in a reunification plan. Everyone from the top down. So we have people that will be going to the schools to respond. We have the bulk of our district staff will actually be assisting at the reunification site, and that's counselors, that's foreign language interpreters, law enforcement, food services. You have to have snacks or water. We'll have, of course, medical care for them. We have reports that will be run. There's a litany of things from our HR department, our student services running demographic reports. We need to know, was that child at school? Who can check that child out of school? Does that child have any medical requirements? And so that's something you need to think about ahead of time. And we've done this on several drills to practice this with law enforcement. And it's worked out well to where we understand that. We know where we can sit. When you go to that reunification site, where can a counselor sit with a parent whose child didn't show up? So think about those kind of things in those drills and what you're going to look for. How are the buses going to enter and exit that location? And there's supplies. So we have enter and exit signs. We've got walkie-talkies. We've got binders and pens and notebooks and the gamut. How are we going to identify? We're actually going to be identifying our students with those little like nylon bracelets so we can write their names on them while they're coming to the reunification site, because to some degree, okay, they've been panicked. Well, how can we distract them to where that they could kind of calm down? Well, how is writing their name on a bracelet going to help? It kind of takes that one step back to where they're having to focus on a task versus I don't know what's going on. So it's a distraction, but at the same time, it benefits us in knowing where to locate those kids, because we'll be locating them alphabetically by last name. So when we've done a drill, we've selected our schools, we've run all our demographic reports, we've determined what faculty was on staff. We have buses that we call out to stage. So we've got staging locations that are far enough, but close enough to these schools. They're geographically located to where they're ready to go if we have an event. They know where to stage and they'll be called. So you've got to call those schools and say, hey, this bus is running late today, or it's not going to show up today because we have something going on. So just think about that kind of stuff. The reunification site, what if it's not available? What are you going to do? So that's something that's like priority number one. And, so you have two sites, what if they're both being used? So there's got to be another, you'll have to make do. Smaller schools are easier. When you start looking at over 2,000 students, it gets more difficult to have a site, but make sure your site's available. Have a group send out, whether it's a J Campus or whatever uniform texting system you use, that you have a group that's been created that says this is an active shooter or this is an emergency event. Report to your station for reunification. Bring your reports, your materials. I mean, we've got our maintenance department brings tables to the location if we need them. So the people assigned reports will run all of their reports. They gather them up and they show up at the event. We'll be placing, like, again, signage for where to come in and out. Law enforcement and emergency personnel are notified. And then again, all staff is notified to go to the district. Our drills that we've done for reunification have included all district senior level directors and supervisors so that they know where to report, so that when they get their teams together, they can tell their teams what to do. Okay, this is a new one, the Cardiac Emergency Response Plan. So Act number 234 of the 2023 regular session says each elementary, middle, and high school shall have a cardiac emergency response plan. So now we have to have a plan and we have to have an annual drill. Now, the drill can be a tabletop. It can be incorporated into another drill, but this is something you're supposed to be doing this next school year. It requires that there be CPR AED trained individuals. A lot of you may have gotten your notice requesting for the serial numbers and the information with regard to your AEDs. And this is part of that training that you'll have to do. You put the plan together. It's a pretty standard, easy plan, but they will have to fill out that crisis team or that CERP response team. And that'll need to be done this year too. Real life. Okay, so this was a situation, I want you to run over this. We always take our real life events and incorporate them into drills, and how do we make things better? So we had death threats at one of our high schools, and we needed to find the people who the death threats were made against, and that took some time. And then law enforcement had to find the individuals that they thought might have been making the threats, and that took time. So we had an extended lockdown that day. We staged our buses in their staging facility. We contacted the schools that would be picked up after them, and that way they knew that either their children were not going to be picked up by a bus, and that as a parent you would need to pick them up, or that their bus would be there late. So our buses were ready to go. Once the lockdown was lifted, law enforcement actually went to the staging area where the buses were at, and they were led to the school. We had them line up in the order they normally were on campus. So when the kids were picked up, it went very, very smoothly. So think about the little details that work, that make things easier. So had we just had all the buses just all over the big parking lot, it may have been a little more chaos. But when those kids came out to catch that bus, it was right where it needed to be. Okay, we did have a murder on a bus last year. This is not something you think about. And it's not something you think about, how am I going to handle this? But since we've gone through that, we know, okay, how do we do things? Will we do anything different? Is there anything we could do differently? So last year, at the end of the school year, we had a student that was shot on the steps of a school bus. There were only 2 other kids on the bus and the bus driver. Law enforcement was immediately notified. And because law enforcement in Lafayette Parish has access to all our school cameras and our bus cameras, they were immediately able to pipe into that bus and see what was going on. Once that occurred, we had to advise the parents of that bus driver that there was going to be no more pickups for those students. We had to reach out to the students. We weren't sure initially who the students were, so we had to identify those. We gathered as a team at the district to prepare communications to both parent and faculty, and what would we be doing next. We kept sending out on a regular basis every 15 minutes that, this is where we're at. Even if we didn't know anything different, we sent out the same communication time and time again, just because if it was your child and you're, for some reason, even if it wasn't your child, but that was the bus your child rode typically, that parent may not have been able to contact their student. So we wanted them to make sure that they knew that this is what's going on. We're in the process of handling it. So communication was really, really important in this matter. The day after this event, we had social workers and counselors at the school following up not only with the 2 students that were on the bus, but with kids that lost that friend that was killed on the bus step. Again, videos were pulled to give to law enforcement, and the suspects were on the loose for 3 days. So we actually did not run the bus at those bus stops until law enforcement said it was safe for us to do. So there's things like that that you kind of think through, that you say, okay, what can we do better? How did we do things this time? And, we dealt very gingerly with this bus driver. He's really struggled with that. So it's not an easy thing to deal with, but you have to learn from every single event. All right, we're going to do a tabletop exercise. So if you can go into your chat. I don't know that I'm going to be able, back to see your chat, but okay, so go into your chat to answer these questions. So a staff member runs into the nurse's office and yells out that a student is down in the gym. She doesn't know what happened because she was not there when it happened. She did overhear someone say that they were playing volleyball and the student may have gotten hit in the head and passed out. What should you do?
The chat is disabled.
You can chat or you can say it. Okay, I'm looking for. I'm losing I can't see the chat on my computer. Crud. All right, somebody that can talk. Y'all want to see what the chat questions are?
I think I try to.
I'm sorry, mine's disabled as well.
But just to push the conversation, I think I'd try to find a pulse.
Okay. Would you pull what about the kids' medical records to see if there's something out there? That'd be another suggestion.
Yes.
Right. Or a lot of times coaches know CPR, so you might reach out to them. So when you get to the gym, you immediately find an unconscious student face down on the floor. You take vitals and find that her pulse is irregular and she has shallow breathing. The other students who witnessed the event are crying and wondering if she's dead. You ask the teacher if she knows what happened, and she says she does not. She just fell to the ground. So what do you do now?
I would have someone immediately dial 911. I would have someone ask if anybody had any medical background. There was a trainer in the gym. Try and assess the situation. If there's enough staff around, I would have ask somebody in the staff to take the girls off to the side that are very upset.
So
I would rely on can you hear me?
Yes.
I would rely on your plan and see where Narcan might be available in the school, and your person who has been trained to use Narcan will know to immediately assist and to apply Narcan, because it could be a possible overdose.
And you would evacuate the students probably from that classroom and stop shelter in place, because you wouldn't want kids coming into that gym with that person on the ground too. So those are you think immediately of just that child, but think about everything else that's going on. So you really wouldn't want other kids transitioning into the gym for a classroom. So 5 minutes. You've already sent 2 staff members to the office for an AED. They come back and ask you if you know how to use it. Because they have never used it, you tell them you have been trained and begin applying the pads. Another staff member shows up and tells you her emergency contact has been notified and we're advised she is allergic to peanuts and penicillin. Okay, so now you're doing your emergency, you're doing the AEDs. What else do you do?
Search for an EpiPen if you have it. If you realize that she is allergic to peanuts, maybe she came in contact with peanut dust, depending upon how sensitive her allergy is for it.
So, and then you know, you go through, so now the child, I guess, is taken to the hospital, ambulance comes and everything is, you know, calmed down as far as that child. But later that afternoon, you get a call from the student's parents at the hospital thanking you for helping. You're advised that it was due to a cardiac abnormality. Subsequently, you're told that rumors are going around that the student overdosed on drugs. So how do you handle that? And that's touchy because the fact is that, you know, you cannot discuss a medical condition without permission, of course, from the family. So do you bring kids together? Do you, how do you handle that to bring closure?
Ms. Desiree, we have one response in the chat. Utilize RAVE to get crisis team on site, start evaluation. If further medical help is needed, then get Acadiana on the way. Go into instructional lockdown to key all others inside classroom so we can handle the situation. Pull child's medical records.
All right. And like I said, I just wanted to put this out there because we all think a little bit differently, and we may have had situations like this, and so we know how to respond. Like I said again, we had tabletop exercises handed out at each of our principal meetings last year, and they came back. In fact, one of them was concerning an out-of-town bus accident, and lo and behold, we had an out-of-town bus accident, and they were prepared. So drills are great, and they're always good to continue to do them, but we need to start thinking outside the box and make things a little bit different, because you prepare for the same thing over and over. I bet a lot of us have gotten in our car to go someplace, and because we routinely go a direction, we go the wrong direction, and we do that without thinking. So muscle memory is good, but at the same time, if we need to change that sometimes, because an emergency is not going to be planned the way we think it's going to be planned. So this is part of what this, the body won't go where the mind has never been. So if you practice oddities or doors blocked, then they may know how to respond better. And I talk extremely fast, so I did this really good. Any questions?
I do have a question, kind of with lockdowns. What would the correct procedure be to notify parents that a lockdown has happened? We've had them happen before, and parents got extremely upset because we didn't notify until after we had the situation under control. And so what is the correct protocol to notify parents? Because I know it's the whole, you don't want to notify them and then have hundreds of parents showing up at your school to try to check their kids out, especially if there is some type of, you know, a situation where there is a shooting to where we need first responders there and they're blocking the pathway. So what is the correct protocol for that?
We send out a J Campus is the system we use for notices, almost immediately advising, you know, school is under lockdown. We're in the process of determining the situation. Law enforcement have been involved or not involved, whatever the situation is. Please do not go to school. You will not be allowed to check your child out. So we go through that process of to say we're in the situation of evaluating this. Law enforcement is involved. The school is safe at this point in time, but do not show up at the school. So we do tell them, don't show up at the school, because your child you'll not be able to be, they won't be released to you. And if it is something where law enforcement is involved, like when we had the death threats, law enforcement kept them away and they weren't allowed. So we do it. We're all about communication, because we found that if we don't do something, it stirs up all kind of other issues. So literally every 15 minutes, it could be the exact same message. We send it out so those parents know we're not neglecting them, we're thinking about them, and they're getting the notification. And it may not say a whole lot, but we're telling them we're okay. Things are moving forward.
Thank you.
There's one other question in the chat for you, Ms. Desiree. Do you have a file of other tabletop situations?
I do. I have a bunch of tabletop exercises that I did a creative writing job last year for our superintendent. So I do have a bunch of them.
Is that something they can reach out to you and you can share, or?
Sure.
All right,
Sure.
we'll put your contact information in the chat.
That's it.
Any other questions?
So I think maybe there's a comment that says there are still parents that will show up. School needs to be able to deal with them. Is there any comments on that and how schools should move forward with that?
Wait, say it again. I'm sorry.
It says there are still parents that will show up. School needs to be able to deal with them.
Yeah, well, see, if it's law enforcement's involved, law enforcement's dealing with them because they're not going to let them get to the school. That's the thing, you know, parents may try and get to the school, but they're not going to be able to get to it. We work very closely with law enforcement. So if we have to secure a school because of an event, they can't get to the campus. We've had them stand across the street from our campuses, but they can't get to the campus.
Will there be anything in this training today or tomorrow that address potential overdose or use of Narcan on a campus?
Tomorrow we have a session on emergency response plans, and I'm certain that's going to be included.
Yeah.
About what time is that?
It is from 9:30 to 10:30. Hi, one of the presenters for tomorrow. That is something we do go over.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. Didn't know you were there. Did I miss any questions? Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Desiree. There should be an evaluation dropped in the chat for that session. Stephen, can you share the pathway for the slide presentations, please? So somebody asked if the slide presentations or recordings will be available, and they will be available in the planning library, and you can see the path there. That will be within the Healthy Schools Community of Practice section on our website. Give us a couple of days to do that. Can't guarantee they will be there today. So let's take a look at tomorrow's agenda. I hope you can join us tomorrow. We have some more excellent sessions. We'll start out with behavioral threat management trainings. You may be aware that we've been conducting those trainings around the state along with state police. We've already talked about medical emergency readiness. That'll be an excellent session around emergency preparedness for medical situations. We're going to have a presentation on the RAVE panic button, which is a requirement within the School Safety Act. We're going to have a session with Crime Stoppers and anonymous reporting. And then finally, the school and nonprofit security grant program will end the day tomorrow. Keep in mind that the link for the Zoom meeting for tomorrow is different from day one. So check your Whova app and make sure that you have that different Zoom link for tomorrow's meeting. Are there any other outstanding questions or concerns?
Hey, Mike. This is
Yes.
Sarah from the center.
Yeah.
I dropped a link in the chat from CISA where they have unlimited tabletop exercises that can be downloaded for free as well.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Everybody's-
To also expand on that, those tabletops, they are kind of broken up in templates for elementary, middle, high school, and for several different of the all hazard categories.
Can you say where those can be found again?
There's a
Chat, but they're on the CISA website.
Okay.
yeah, Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, Infrastructure Security Agency. And they also are located on our website, but there is a link in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah and Travis. Once again, I want to thank all of our presenters for an excellent job today. Thank you to our staff for supporting the event today. And we hope to see everybody tomorrow. Enjoy your day. We'll stay on for a couple minutes in case there are any other outstanding questions for today. But otherwise, enjoy your day. Hope to see you tomorrow.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
How can we access this recording? I don't know if I didn't hear if you mentioned it or not.
Yes, Stephen, go back. Can you go back to the slide, please? So,
okay.
Can you see that slide?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mr. Joseph, it's also in the chat. The link to how to get to the school systems planning library. However, like Mike addressed, they're not going to be there right today. We hope to upload them as soon as we can, but there's no promises they're going to be uploaded today.
Okay, no problem. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, sir.
This may be a stupid question, but I have saved the chat, but I don't know where it's saved. Is it saving it on my computer or your website?
It should save in your Zoom folder.
Okay,
But
perfect.
And just let us know if you can't, if there's something
Yeah.
in particular you need.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.